Dark space stretched endlessly, silent and undisturbed for 1,000 years. The stars shone like frozen flames, indifferent to the wars and civilizations that had risen and fallen in their light. For the Galactic Council, the last great war was a distant memory, a tragedy buried under centuries of peace. Humanity had vanished, wiped out in a final battle against the combined forces of the galaxy. Or so they believed. Admiral Selver stood on the bridge of his warship, the Vorthin's Wrath, staring at the holographic display before him. A strange signal had appeared, deep in the Forbidden Sector, an area abandoned after the extinction of the human race. No ships traveled there, no colonies remained. It was a graveyard, untouched for a millennium. Yet now, something was stirring. His second-in-command, Captain Relka, approached. "Sir, the Council believes it's nothing. A malfunction. A rogue transmission from a dead satellite." Selver narrowed his eyes. He had spent decades studying the war against humanity, analyzing every battle, every decision that led to their destruction. He knew how the humans fought, how they thought. And this signal was no accident. "We're going in," he said, his voice firm. The fleet moved toward the coordinates, engines humming against the silence of space. As they entered the Forbidden Sector, a strange unease settled over the crew. The darkness here felt different, too still, too heavy. It was as if something ancient was watching them. The first sign of something unusual came when their scanners detected a structure, a massive, derelict space station orbiting a dead star. It was old, covered in dust and debris, but its design was unmistakably human. Relka's voice was tight with tension. This station shouldn't exist. The records show no survivors, no remaining outposts. Selver didn't respond. He was staring at the station's faint energy readings. It was dead, but not completely. Something inside it was still awake. A team was assembled to board the station. As they stepped into its cold, hollow corridors, their footsteps echoed unnaturally loud. The walls were lined with ancient technology, rusted and damaged, but still holding a strange power. They found the control center, its screens cracked and flickering. A single console blinked, waiting. One of the engineers hesitated before activating it. The moment he did, the entire station trembled. A voice, distorted, mechanical, but unmistakably human, spoke through the speakers. "We are not gone." The crew froze. The lights flickered on, one by one, revealing the station's true purpose. Hundreds of dormant warships lined the docking bays, covered in the dust of 1,000 years. The ships were old, but they were not broken. They were waiting. And now, they were waking up. The warships stirred from their long slumber, their engines humming back to life after 1,000 years of silence. Dust and debris fell away as the ancient vessels activated, their metal hulls gleaming under the station's dim lights. The crew of the Vorthin's Wrath watched in stunned silence. These ships were human. They should not exist. Admiral Selver gritted his teeth as the voice from the station repeated its chilling message. "We are not gone." Captain Relka's hands tightened into fists. This is impossible. The humans were wiped out. We saw their last world burn. There was nothing left. But the evidence before them said otherwise. The human warships were awakening, one by one, their ancient systems roaring back to life. One of the engineers frantically worked at the console, trying to decipher the station's logs. His voice trembled as he read out loud. "These records, they're old, dating back to the final days of the war. It looks like a contingency plan." Selver turned sharply. "Explain." The engineer swallowed hard. Before their extinction, the humans created this station as a failsafe, a hidden fleet waiting for the right conditions to activate. He hesitated, then added, "Sir, the system isn't just waking up the ships. It's sending a signal." A deep pulse radiated from the station, traveling outward into the depths of space. It was not a distress call. It was a summons. Relka's voice was barely above a whisper, calling for what? The answer came almost immediately. From the darkness beyond, something moved. The ship's scanners screamed to life, detecting an incoming fleet. Dozens, no, hundreds, of ships were emerging from the void, their energy signatures unlike anything seen in centuries. The humans had returned. Zelver's blood ran cold. He had spent his career studying the fall of humanity, convinced they were a mistake of history, a race that had fought too hard and lost too much. But now, as their warships appeared like ghosts from the past, he realized the truth. They had never been defeated. They had been waiting. And now, the galaxy would learn what it meant to fear humanity once more. The stars remained unchanged, silent witnesses to the passage of 1,000 years. Planets rose and fell, empires expanded and collapsed, but one truth remained absolute: humanity was gone. Or so the galaxy believed. Admiral Xelver stood on the bridge of Vorthan's Wrath, his reptilian eyes locked onto the massive human station ahead. The structure was ancient, battered by time, yet still operational. It pulsed with energy, its dormant warships now fully active, their cold steel hulls gleaming as if freshly forged. No one knew where they had come from. No one knew how they had survived. Captain Relka's voice broke the tense silence. "Incoming transmissions from the human ships, sir." Selver turned sharply. "Are they responding to hails?" Relka shook her head, fear flickering in her eyes. "No, sir. They're transmitting a single message across every frequency." The bridge speakers crackled to life, and an eerie synthetic voice filled the room. "We are not the past. We are the reckoning." The words sent a chill through the crew. "Sir," one of the officers whispered, "this isn't just an automated response. There are living humans on those ships." Selver's claws tightened against the railing. It was impossible. Every last trace of humanity had been erased from existence, wiped from the stars a millennium ago. Their fleets had burned, their homeworlds reduced to dust. There had been no survivors. There could be no survivors. And yet, here they were. The human warships began to move, their engines glowing with unnatural energy. Their formation was precise, disciplined, but there was something else, something terrifying. They did not move like relics of a lost civilization. They moved with purpose, with intent. "They're scanning us," an officer reported. "But not just us. The entire system." Relka exhaled sharply. "They're gathering intelligence, updating their data." Zelver realized the terrifying truth. They'd never stopped fighting. His voice was barely a whisper. The bridge fell into stunned silence as the human fleet continued its silent, methodical advance. They had waited 1,000 years. They had prepared in the shadows. And now, they were ready. The void of space trembled as the human fleet advanced. Their ships, sleek and ominous, cut through the darkness like predators awakening from a long slumber. The galaxy had long since forgotten them, dismissed them as nothing more than myths and echoes of a bygone era. Admiral Xelver watched the tactical display in horror. The fleet before him was not the broken remains of a lost civilization. It was precise, calculated, alive. This isn't possible," Captain Relka stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Humans were erased. We erased them." Yet here they were. The human warships didn't rush. They moved like a force of nature, as if time itself had only sharpened their resolve. Their lead vessel, a massive dreadnought, bore no visible insignia, only a single glaring crimson light pulsing from its command tower. "They're transmitting again," the comms officer reported. His scales had paled with fear. Same message: "We are not the past. We are the reckoning." Zelver's claws curled against the metal of his command chair. The galaxy had believed it had won. That humanity had been purged from existence. But if that were true, then who commanded these warships? "Sir," another officer called out, his voice trembling. "They've locked weapons." An eerie silence fell over the bridge. Captain Relka swallowed hard. We can't let them regroup. We have to strike first. Silver didn't respond immediately. He stared at the holographic projections of the human vessels, his mind racing. Every story about their past wars had spoken of their tenacity, their refusal to surrender. If they had somehow survived for 1,000 years, then what had they become? He wasn't sure. He wanted to find out. "Open fire," he ordered. Vorthan's wrath unleashed a barrage of plasma bolts, each one powerful enough to tear through a battleship's hull. The fleet followed, their cannons illuminating the void with streaks of destruction. For a moment, there was hope. Then, from the depths of the human fleet, the dreadnought retaliated. One blast. A single calculated pulse of energy erupted from its core, slicing through space with impossible precision. The plasma fire meant to destroy them dissipated in an instant, as if erased from existence. The bridge fell into stunned silence. "They have energy nullifiers," Relka whispered in disbelief. Silver's heart pounded. No species had ever perfected such technology, not even the most advanced civilizations of the Council. But the humans had. The dreadnought continued forward, untouched, unhindered, its crimson eye burning through the void. For the first time in his long career, Admiral Silver felt true fear. The humans had not just survived. They had evolved. The silence on the bridge of Vorthan's wrath was suffocating. The fleet had fired first, throwing everything they had at the human warships. And yet, not a single shot had landed. The energy nullifiers had erased their attacks like they had never existed. Admiral Silver's claws dug into the metal of his command chair as he watched the battle unfold, or rather, the lack of one. The humans weren't returning fire. Not yet. They were waiting, watching. "Why aren't they attacking?" Captain Relka's voice was barely a whisper, her scales paler than Silver had ever seen them. "They have the advantage." The answer was simple. "They want us to understand," Silver said. "They want us to know that this is not a war. This is a message." The crimson light on the dreadnought pulsed again, and a transmission came through. The same message, unwavering, undeniable. "We are not the past. We are the reckoning." Across the fleet, officers and crew whispered among themselves. Some were already backing away from their consoles, as if mere distance could protect them from the impossible. "Sir," the comms officer croaked, "they've activated their weapon systems." Silver clenched his jaw. He had seen planetary sieges, the fall of empires, the devastation of war. But he had never seen anything like this. The humans were not charging in with reckless abandon. They had calculated every move, every weakness, and now they were about to strike with terrifying precision. The first blast was not meant to destroy. It was meant to warn. A single beam of energy shot from the human dreadnought, slicing effortlessly through the void. It passed between two of Silver's battleships, so precise that it did not even graze their shields. But it did something worse. It shut them down, completely. The ships floated helplessly, their engines flickering, their defenses offline. What kind of weapon is that?" Relka gasped. A second blast followed, this time aimed at a destroyer. No explosion, no fire. The ship simply stopped. Every light on its hull went dark, its systems erased in an instant. Silver's breathing was heavy. The humans had perfected something far more terrifying than any superweapon. They could disable an entire fleet without firing a single traditional shot. "They're giving us a choice," he realized. The humans could have obliterated them already, but they hadn't. "They want us to surrender," Relka whispered. Silver wasn't sure if it was surrender they wanted. No, the humans had come back for something else. Retribution. The bridge of Vorthan's wrath was silent. No one dared to speak as the human warship loomed over the battlefield like a vengeful specter. The last attack had left two of their finest battleships drifting lifelessly in the void, their systems wiped out in an instant. No explosions, no wreckage, just the eerie silence of defeat. Admiral Silver's claws tightened around the armrests of his command chair. The enemy had yet to fire a lethal shot, and yet they had already won. "Orders, sir." Captain Relka's voice was tight with fear. Selver's gaze remained locked on the view screen. He had faced impossible odds before, had led the Vorthan fleet through countless wars. But this was something different. The humans had returned, but not as the desperate survivors the galaxy had once known. They had come back as something far more dangerous, superior. Another message came through the comms, the same one that had played before. The same voice, calm and cold, yet filled with an undeniable authority. "You thought time would erase us. You were wrong." A deep, uneasy silence filled the bridge. The humans had spoken little, but every word carried weight. This was no mindless act of vengeance. It was a warning. Selver exhaled slowly. He could see the panic spreading through his crew, the realization setting in that there was no victory here, only survival, if the humans allowed it. A sudden pulse of energy rippled across the void. The dreadnought's crimson lights intensified. Selver's heart pounded as a new energy reading appeared on the scanners. "They're locking onto our flagship," a technician whispered. It's not a weapon." Relka's eyes narrowed. "Then what is it?" The answer came in an instant. A beam of light shot from the human vessel, wrapping around Vorthan's raft like a web of fire. Every screen on the bridge flickered. Systems went haywire. Consoles sparked. For a brief, terrifying moment, it felt as though reality itself was unraveling. Then, just as quickly as it began, it stopped. The lights returned. The ship stabilized. The crew gasped in confusion, checking their systems. "They disabled our entire command network," the technician said, voice shaking. "In less than 3 seconds." Selver swallowed hard. The humans had demonstrated absolute control. They had stripped the fleet's strongest warship of its power without so much as a warning shot. This wasn't just a display of force. It was a lesson. "They're proving a point," Selver murmured. "They don't need to destroy us." A single transmission came through, the last one needed. "The war is over. Stand down." For the first time in his long career, Admiral Selver realized what true defeat felt like. Not through bloodshed, not through destruction, but through the overwhelming realization that the enemy had already won. The galaxy had moved on. It had been 1,000 years since the last human was seen, and in that time, the universe had rewritten history to erase them. The great empires of the past no longer feared the name of humanity. To the younger races, they were nothing more than myths, a cautionary tale of arrogance leading to extinction. But the truth was far more terrifying. Deep within the cold, forgotten void, a signal pulsed. It was weak, almost imperceptible, but it carried a name that had not been spoken in centuries. Humanity. On the bridge of the Selfar flagship, Grand Marshal Varric stared at the data feed with a mixture of disbelief and dread. The signal was old, impossibly old, yet it had activated with precision. Something had sent it. "Confirm the source," he commanded. His officers scrambled to comply, but the results were already clear. "The coordinates lead to the K-Vor expanse," an officer reported. "The system was deemed uninhabitable centuries ago." Varric's mandibles twitched. That was a lie, one crafted by the Galactic Dominion long ago. The K-Vor expanse wasn't uninhabitable, it was forbidden. The remnants of humanity's war machines were buried there, locked away under the assumption that time would rust them into dust. But the signal said otherwise. The bridge was silent as the realization set in. The Dominion had told them humanity was extinct, that the war had ended long ago. But the war wasn't over. It had never been over. A sudden tremor rocked the ship. Alarms blared as proximity sensors screamed warnings across the command deck. Something just appeared at the edge of the system. Varric turned to the view screen, his breath catching in his throat. A ship, massive and ancient, loomed in the darkness. Its hull bore no markings, no insignia, but its design was unmistakable. Human. The vessel did not hail them. It did not send warnings. It simply drifted closer, its dark metal reflecting the distant light of a forgotten sun. Then, a single transmission came through. The voice, calm and cold, filled with the weight of centuries. "Did you think we would stay buried forever?" Varix felt his blood freeze. The myths were wrong. The history books were wrong. Humanity had not been erased. They had been waiting. And now, they were back.